helping you with Acorn and RISC computing.
So it won't be me doing the first half of the talk tonight, that will be Richard. So without any further ado, over to Richard.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you all for coming this evening. We are playing, this is a double act, but it's not quite Laurel and Hardy. I know which one I'd prefer to be, but I have no idea which one Andrew would like to be. So I won't be any ruder than that to him.
I'm usually the one putting on my bomb.
There we go. So thank you for inviting RISC Developments to come and talk to you. Some of you will have been at the show in the last week or so down in London, so some of this will be familiar. Others of you won't have been able to get there, so hopefully we can give you a refresh and let you know basically what RISC Developments, i.e. Andrew and myself, have been up to over the summer. Do excuse me, I think I'm coming down with another cold, having had one the week before the show. So I'm glad I was okay for the show. So RISC Developments, what have we been up to? Well, the good news is that after a lot of hard work, a lot of time and effort that's been put in by myself and Andrew and all the people that support us, we've been able to do RISC Direct 5.31. Now, the upgrade is available on the website, and it's an upgraded upgrade. That is there, and that's available tonight. And obviously, that's available to everybody. And we've also managed to update the link to the original 528. That's now also been upgraded. Andrew, can you nod your head or shake your head? Am I meant to be talking about this, or did you say this one was for you?
You've grabbed it, so run with it.
Okay, sorry about that. My head is definitely woolly today, so I do apologise. Andrew and I have been talking about it all day, and every time he tells me something, I keep on forgetting. So I'm sorry for that. We've upgraded the original RISC Direct thanks to a forum post that has enabled us to make certain that the current 528, the original, will work not only on the 8 gig cards that we were giving out to people for free who had never had RISC OS, but it will also fit on a 16 gig and a 32 gig card. So we've been able to resize it, and that was thanks to a post that we read on the forum, a bit of knowledge that neither Andrew nor I, despite the amount of time we've spent in this industry, we didn't know about it, and we were able to do that. So we're very pleased that that's been upgraded today as well. So if anyone wants the original or needs to have the original to put on a new SD card, effectively almost any card that you want to put on size-wise will work. Obviously, there are some SD cards that work better with RISC OS and the Raspberry Pis. Oh dear, are you all right, Charles? It looked like I was scaring you there. Apologies. I'm not used to doing a Zoom talk. I can see people's faces much better than I can when I'm standing all in front of you at a show, because I normally can't see that many of you when we have the darkened rooms. So thank you. So what's in this upgrade? Really, everything that RISC Development stands for. We have put Pinboard 2 in there. We've put the TCP/IP stack in there. We've put the Wi-Fi in there. We've put Iris in there. If I've missed anything, Andrew can pick me up later on. But all of our software that we've had and various people have been beta testing, it's been released in bits and pieces. It's now all available in one package. The whole point of RISC Direct always has been that if someone who doesn't know about RISC OS comes across us, is looking at the Raspberry Pi, finds a link, that when they download RISC Direct, they get a complete ecosystem, not just the operating system. And then, well, how do I get things to work or what? It's actually got programs on there. Obviously, it had the idea of it was seeded when someone said, well, we need to have kids learning to do programming. So there are programming tools on there. There are games on there. And basically there's everything that you need. And of course, now that we've been able to get Wi-Fi working in just about every place, certainly that we've been testing, and we've spent an awful lot of time going to pubs and hotels and places that have bars. I don't drink beer, but I've enjoyed a lot of ciders. Andrew's been out, all the test guys, we've all been there. And we've used our Pinebook Pros and we've tested it all out. Now, I appreciate that people with Raspberry Pis won't be taking them to the pub necessarily, but they will be able to use it on their home network. So I was sorting out all the names that we have from the website today that have emailed us to say, please let us know when something is happening. Now, we've refined that list again today. I've been going through. That's going to come out in the next week or so. So we will let people all around the world. I was pleased to see all the different names that I couldn't pronounce. That will be available. That will go out so that people will know that it's available and that the upgrade is there and that all these things are available to them. But there was one particular one that caught my eye as I was going through. And it said, thanks for nothing. After I spent X amount of time getting this all to work, and I couldn't even get it on my bloody Wi-Fi. Now, that was back in 2021. Wi-Fi did not exist then. So I've made certain that person's name is on our mailing list, because that was a very good point, very succinctly put to us, I think. But we've now been able to, we've got the Wi-Fi, we've got it in RISC Direct. So if somebody does download it now, hopefully it will all spring into life for them in the right way, and they will be able to use their Wi-Fi and they'll be able to go online. They'll be able to use the Iris browser that we have on there, and they will be able to simply do what they need to do within the limits, of course, of what RISC OS will do. And we're all aware of those. But, we're trying to expand that. I don't think RISC OS developments have done too bad a job. Our programmers have been marvellous. I've spoken to them on many occasions, said, well, what about so-and-so? Or can we do this? Or can we do that? Give or take a certain amount of time. And me saying, well, I would like it yesterday. They're absolutely brilliant. I don't think there's really very little that we've thrown at them in the way, or I've thrown at them in the way of requests as an end user. Andrews are technical, and obviously, as I say at all the shows, if you've got a technical question, go and see Andrew after the show, or in this instance, see part B of our talk this evening, and Andrew can take some of those questions. But from the end user side, which is, I'm an end user with a little bit of knowledge, which obviously makes me terribly dangerous and great for beta testing. But I can say to them, well, why have you done the Wi-Fi like this? Surely it should be XYZ, not ABC. And we have a to and fro, backwards and forwards, and then one of us say, oh, I say sometimes, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that's the way to go. Or they'll turn around and say, oh, yes, well, as a programmer, as a techie person, I would do it like that, but I see what you mean. We've tried to approach it. I tried to think of it as, well, how does this work? And Andrew will hopefully be able to demonstrate to you a little bit later. I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Andrew, but this was in my talk on Saturday, that, how do you find your Wi-Fi? Now, on a PC or a Mac, you look for your Wi-Fi icon and you go and click on it, and you get to see the Wi-Fis in your local area. In RISC-OSC, up until this upgrade, I think it's in the upgrade. Again, Andrew can correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but certainly in the version of the Wi-Fi that I've got on my machine now, I can do a left mouse click on the Wi-Fi icon on my icon bar, and it brings up a list. Now, that's not a RISC OS way of doing it. The way we would do it, and it's still available to us, is we go to the Wi-Fi icon, we'd do menu, we'd go down the list, we'd look for SSID, we'd go across, and there's the list. That still works. So we've not taken anything away from a normal RISC OS user, but what we have done is we've put something in that makes sense to somebody who doesn't know about RISC-OSC, who is a PC user or is a Mac user, and they would normally just click on the icon and expect to see something come up. The way it was on the slightly earlier versions of the Wi-Fi was the fact that if you clicked with the left mouse button or the right mouse button, nothing would happen at all. So we've added an extra something which is worthwhile having for people who don't know about RISC-OSC. And I have to admit, if there's a one mouse button click less, I think that's a bit easier personally. So for traditionalists, I do apologise. I'm a young reactionary in comparison, but if it makes my life easier, I think that's an absolutely great way of doing things. So that, if you like, covers the Wi-Fi. We've got the new TCP/IP stack in, which will make life easier. It works better. We've got the security involved in that. You've most probably all heard my TCP/IP talks, but we now also have, because we had the Wi-Fi coming in, we've now also got the network manager. Again, something that we've looked at, how do people do things on the others, and gone, okay, well, we like that bit. We like that bit. This is what we need. We need to have these items available to us. And I really think that Andy Vore, who I know, again, a few of you will have seen, and he's taken part in some of our productions. He's done a really good job on Network Manager. It's still not completely polished and finished, but I'm hoping that Andrew will be able to show you how that works. But again, it makes life easier. We've put in things that we've never actually had before. So although we're aiming for people who haven't used RISC-OSC before, I hope that what we're actually putting in is stuff that everybody can use and that everyone will find useful on all their machines, whether they're a new hand at it or they've been around the block twice or more times. So again, just generally, again, more improvements. You know that I was originally involved with a very old browser going back to Castle Technologies days with Oregano on their Ionix machine. You know this, again, we know the story there. We weren't able to do what we wanted to do. And then someone very cheekily said to me a few years ago, well, why didn't you bring out the browser? Really, you should do a browser for us. So I just turned around and said, well, you donate the money and we'll see what we can do. RISC-OSC Developments was then almost formed out of that comment, because we had a few people who were able to give us a sizable chunk of money, and other people who gave us very generously out of their pockets. And of course, we'll always accept more money on your behalf so that we can spend it on more wonderful toys for us, but I hope wonderful toys for you guys in the software and the upgrades and just generally trying to improve RISC-OSC as best we possibly can for you. That's really what drives Andrew and myself. We're businessmen. Yes, we are here to, in our daily lives, run a company and pay the mortgage. But at the same time, we do try to work very hard on anything that RISC developments can do. And RISC Direct, I would say that's most probably been what we've spent most of our summer doing this year. It's been very enjoyable. It's been very frustrating, but we have managed to get somewhere with it. And I'm very glad that we've been able to produce what we've got. Yes, I'm sure someone will point out to us that there are problems or issues, and that's most probably something that Andrew can talk about more than me. But at that point, I think that's just about where my chat ran out on Saturday. So, Andrew, if I may, I'll mute myself and hand over to you.
Thanks, Richard. So, yeah, I mean, Richard's given you a fairly clear overview of what RISC Direct is all about, and how it's basically our showcase for essentially all things RISC. It brings together all of our projects, be it RISC itself, obviously with the IPR holders for the operating system, and it showcases the Iris web browser, the Wi-Fi, Pinboard 2, impressions on there, essentially all of the bits and pieces that RISC Developments has been involved with can be seen coming to fruition in RISC Direct, and that was why it was important to set this out in time for the London show, so that you could see effectively what we've been dreaming of since RISC Developments took shape all those years ago, really. To have an operating system. Annoyingly, the Raspberry Pi 5 had come out and burst the bubble slightly, but the idea was always to have this sort of one-stop RISC image that you could give out to people, plug it into their Raspberry Pis, and have an experience that is as close as we can to offering sort of full functionality on the Raspberry Pi out of the box. So now we have that with the browser, with the Wi-Fi, etc. But of course, the Pi 5's come along, and sadly, we're no longer state of the Pi art, as it were. But I think for any RISC on a 32-bit Pi, then RISC Direct is as close as we can make it, as good as it gets in terms of what's currently possible with a RISC the That being said, we're always open to suggestions. And I noticed, I think yesterday, or the day before, somebody had posted his findings on the RISC Open forums about sort of tweaks and things that he would like to see changed in RISC Direct. And so over the last couple of days, Rich and I have been beavering away, sorting a few things out. And as he said, the version that's now live on the website, it's not meaningfully changed. So if you've already downloaded it and you're using the upgrade already, there's no point re-downloading it. But there's now all sorts of little tweaks that we hope for the better. So it now tidies up the loader partition. If you've got some errant files in there carried over from previous versions, they get knocked out. There's contact information for technical support and the like. We've shrunk the version 2 disk image down from 16 gig down to 7 gig, so it should fit on most micro SD cards. We've added a README file to it. Basically, we're trying to be responsive to the suggestions that people make, that if they've got constructive suggestions about what we're doing with RISC Direct, then we want to hear those constructive suggestions and we'll try and act on them. There's still an outstanding thing where somebody was dumped to a 640-480 desktop because their Pi didn't recognize their monitor. I have managed to simulate that problem. So tomorrow's job is to develop a better 640-480 support for various things. and include a mechanism for getting out of a jam if you find yourself in that situation. So that's still to come. But the key thing is we're listening to the feedback, and where possible, we're trying to improve still further going forwards. Now, I'm going to now show you share the screen. This is just using the standard VNC server that is built into RISC-OS Direct. So if I go share screen and then share that, and then click share. Can somebody put their hands up just to say that they're seeing my desktop, please? Yeah, okay, you're seeing a desktop. So basically, this is a RISC-OS Direct desktop that would appear once you've done the upgrade. I'll show you the upgrade process so you can see you're upgrading existing RISC-OS Direct. It's very straightforward. And I can sort of show you a couple of the little extra bits and pieces that have gone in. So first and foremost, let's look at the RISC-OS Direct upgrade process. So what we have here is the actual upgrade zip that you download from the website. Although it's currently a zip file of an upgrade, we are in the process of trying to do a new version 3 complete standalone image. But it seems silly to go to the trouble of making the sort of set in stone disk image whilst we were still sort of tidying things up and getting the main upgrade where we wanted it to be. So we've just held off getting that out. Hopefully in the next week or so we should be able to get the complete disk image out as well. And effectively we ran out of time before the London show. So you download the zip for existing RISC-OS Direct. It is, I think, just under 300 megabytes in size. It's about 297 meg. So there's quite a lot in there. And you'll see that basically we have a README file, a prepare file, and 2 folders, disk and ROM. The README file, again, has had a little tweak. We had somebody who tried to apply the Raspberry Pi 5.31 to a non-Raspberry Pi machine, so we've updated the README file just to stress that it is only for use with Raspberry Pi. And similarly, the installer for the operating system now double checks that everything is tickety-boo before going ahead with the installation. And you'll see at the bottom, we've got the contact details that have been added in with the tech support address. The process is straightforward. The first thing we do is we run the prepare file. And that will, he said boldly, this machine has already been upgraded, so probably don't really want to be doing that. You will see when you reboot a folder on the desktop containing any files that were backed up or removed during the update process. So this is basically created in boot choices pin board so that it appears on the pin board automatically when pin board 2 gets installed as part of the upgrade. And that contains any backed up or replaced files. So if you've got any settings that you think disappeared during the RISC-OS Direct upgrade, you'll be able to find those settings in the folder at the top. Once you've run the prepare script, what that does is basically to go through the disk image and make sure that it's safe to apply all the updates. You're not going to have any conflicts in file names or access permissions or folders that are now files and vice versa. So it goes through, sorts everything out. Once you've done that, you go to disk and you literally just select everything and drag and drop that onto your existing machine. And what it will go through, it will add and replace all the files that are needed on top of your existing copies on your machine. That will take quite a while because, as I say, there are an awful lot of new elements. But once it's completed and the copy operation is done, you're all ready. The final destination is the RISC-OS ROM. You run the OS upgrade program, which I can't show you per se. Let's just go inside and run the run image. You can simulate it. Because it's potentially doing a major operating system upgrade from 5.28 to 5.31, it warns you if you're running the new TCP/IP stack. That's not because of any particular problem with the new TCP/IP stack, but because the TCP/IP stack tailors itself to the operating system version that you're running. We advise uninstalling and reinstalling the TCP/IP when doing a major upgrade like this. For those technically inclined, this is because certain modules will start up when the operating system starts up, and if they're left difficult to kill them later. I believe the MBUF manager is a particular one that if it's not stopped right on day one, and because major operating system versions result in new module numbers sometimes, and RISC-OS stores unplugged modules as numerically, you can't predict from one version to another what changes to module numbers might have occurred. So the safest option, take off the TCP/IP and then put it back on once you've completed the upgrade. That process is made particularly simple because once you've done it and you click reboot to complete the upgrade, you'll be welcomed with the first time setup screen, which is a new thing in this version of RISC-OS Direct. Basically, if you haven't completed the setup already, when you reboot, you will be introduced to RISC-OS Direct. This is a way of allowing people to set up their settings as they wish, and also a way that we can show licenses, disclaimers, and introduce people to RISC-OS itself. So you'll see that we've got the Apache 2 license under which RISC-OS itself is distributed. A disclaimer which essentially talks about the usual sort of fitness for purpose, etc., that an operating system unfortunately has to have. And it also lists modules and things like that that form RISC-OS, so it's clear which modules are covered by which licenses. Once you're happy, you click I've read the thing, and you can click Proceed. The next screen allows to set up our keyboard and mouse configuration. This is because different computers will have different keyboards and mice. We don't know what people are going to be using exactly, because somebody might be using it on a Pi 400, somebody else might be using it with a 2-button Windows mouse. So we need to have some flexibility in configuration here. You'll see that we can set it so that the right mouse button acts as a menu, because in the PC world, most people are used to pop-up menus appearing on a right mouse click. So if you tick the first option, it will swap the middle and right mouse buttons. So if you're coming from a Windows world, then you may well find it more natural to have the pop-up menu on the right click, in which case it just becomes the middle click. It's also useful because if you've only got a 2-button mouse, in general, with RISC-OS, you need the select button, you need the menu button. If you have to jettison any mouse button, it's the adjust mouse button that you can live without, by and large. So again, swapping those buttons around can help people with 2-button mice. Menu key on the keyboard, straightforward. Windows keyboards have a menu key. We might as well make it pop up the menu. I found this useful the other day when the middle mouse click on my mouse stopped working, and it meant I could still use the menu key to continue using the computer until I'd replaced it. Finally, on the not finally, or on a compact keyboard, like a Pi 400, you don't necessarily get the full array of function keys. If you don't have the F12 key, that can be a problem on RISC-OS. So again, we provide the option to switch around the behaviors so that you can adjust a Pi 400 to make it more usable under RISC-OS. And finally, there's a similar option to the menu thing for the Windows key to make it act like a break, because RISC-OS use key so frequently. Again, that's a key that doesn't always appear on modern keyboards. The advanced button provides access to the keyboard settings window in boot, allowing you to change the international options. So if you want to set it to a US keyboard, for example, you can do so there. Then we're on to the network configuration. This is basically the way that we allow people to choose what TCP/IP setup they would like to have. And you can see the default behavior is to use the latest net manager and IPv6 with Wi-Fi. We expect that's what most people will choose. And if you pick that, that will reinstall the TCP/IP stack if you previously uninstalled it during the installation. Your second option is to use the classic RISC-OS, which networking, which will use the standard RISC-OS IPv4 setup that comes with RISC-OS 5. There's no reason for you not to do that, but on the other hand, we expect most people will prefer the extra features that you get with the new IPv6 stack. And finally, we had a few people who use RISC-OS because they appreciate a lack of connectivity, the ability to switch off and turn off the outside world. If they just want to write, they don't want endless pop-ups and Windows updates and all the other malarkey that you get on modern other platforms. So you can choose to turn networking off completely and stay offline if you just want to turn off the rest of the world and run RISC-OS as an isolated single box computer. And obviously RISC-OS works really well as an isolated system because that's how Acorn envisaged it when they first created it back in the 80s. So you can run the operating system however you feel it's going to work for you. The final stage of the setup just introduces you to some of the applications that are included with RISC-OS Direct. We felt that if somebody was new to RISC-OS and they were presented with a RISC-OS desktop, you don't necessarily know what the different programs do. If you've never, if this is your first exposure to RISC-OS or you haven't used it for 20 years, what is Iris? What is Ovation Pro? Zap? What's that? It gives you an opportunity to see what's included, learn a little bit about the program, see the icons with an explanation, continue on, organizer, and so on. A little bit about the highlights of what's included in the system. We can then open the apps file, apps folder, and get access to the applications, or we can click to view the RISC-OS user guide to learn more about and get used to the new operating system. I'm not going to click complete because that would finish the session and install the latest TCP/IP stack if we'd so selected. But you can see that just takes people through the initial 5 minutes of using RISC-OS and gets them up to speed, much like a similar setup does on the Raspberry Pi operating system, if you've ever tried that. It's something that we may well expand in future, add a little more functionality, a few more ideas, and based on feedback that we've had on the forums and via email, there are some more ideas that we can add there. But you get the idea of the sort of smooth onboarding that we've introduced in RISC-OS Direct version 3. The main thing for people are going to be the combination of Iris, the new pin board, and the Wi-Fi. We'll start with Iris. A lot of effort has been put into getting this version of Iris out and making sure that it works with the various programs. One complaint that we've had from people in the past is that Iris doesn't necessarily play well with other RISC-OS programs, in particular Python. You can see Iris running there with JavaScript and the like, CSS. But if we also then run Chrome, oh well, I feel like I've just done a Bill Gates. That should have worked. That's one to add to the get it fixed for tomorrow catalogue. Basically, we put a fair bit of work into trying to make sure that Iris and Python and the like played together nicely, and that should have, as I say, that should have worked, but it hasn't. So my apologies. There's still more to work to do, and that's why this hasn't yet gone into a fixed image. Is because we knew there'd still be little gotchas that have come to light. As I say, I don't know why that one's gone wrong, but that's Solid's law that when you're doing live demo, you go wrong. And the idea is that by making sure that we can make all the different elements work together correctly, then we can showcase RISC-OS and deliver Iris in a form that will work in the best possible way for people. As I say, clearly work to be done, which is why this is an ongoing project and not something that we can just wash our hands of and walk away. So yeah, obviously RISC-OS has needed a new web browser for a very long time, and the fact that we're able to include Iris with RISC-OS Direct in a way that users will be able to just use out of the box is a big step forward for the operating system. The ability to use modern websites and have a modern web experience, have things work in a way that they would be, somebody new to RISC-OS would expect them to work. You can see all the sort of interactive content just working as you would expect on any platform. It's a big step forward for the operating system, and something that we're very pleased to be able to release. And then you couple that with features like the Wi-Fi. You can see it picking up. I just left clicked on the icon as Richard was talking about, and you can see it picking up the Wi-Fi networks here. We can just click on a Wi-Fi network, enter our Wi-Fi key, and connect to it. I'm not going to do that because I'm using the network connection to do the VNC session. I'm sure it would work, but I don't really want to mess with that while I'm in the middle of a demonstration. One of the things we have done with the new TCP/IP stack is to begin the work towards interface prioritization, so that it has some concept that a wired network is preferable to a wireless network, for example, so that if you are sort of connected to both networks, it will have some sense that the wired network is the one that it should put the traffic through in preference, if practical. But that's still ongoing work. There's more still to happen with respect to that aspect of the stack. You can see it's identified both the wired and the wireless interfaces. We can configure both separately or together. The network manager allows us to do on-the-fly changes to network configuration. Again, I'm not going to do so because I'm doing the session over the network, so I don't wish to lose the connection if we're changing things. But basically, you can do it all without a reboot, so there's no need to reboot your computer when making changes to network settings. Additionally, a network manager allows us to integrate other aspects of RISC-OS networking on the fly. So, for example, you can plug in a network cable, have it automatically DHCP a connection, then bring up ShareFS automatically when the network connection comes up, all without needing to reboot the computer on the fly in the desktop. is a level of flexibility in networking that doesn't exist in the previous versions of the stack without either additional software or in many cases it's just not possible. So the new TCP/IP stack represents a big step forward in terms of delivering a network experience that is more akin to what people would expect on other platforms. The network manager also introduces the concept of profiles, and whilst most people will not want to mess with this, they'll just use the default profile. It means that you can set up different profiles for home or work, or if you go out to, if you take your computer to the pub, maybe you go to a user group, you can set up a profile for each of these locations and then set up the network settings accordingly. This means you don't need to have, say, the Wi-Fi details for the pub mixed into the details for your home, so you can separate things and have some level of segregation between different profiles and what you're going to do with those. There's also an element of automatic profile detection starting to come in the latest builds, where it will detect what Wi-Fi networks you have available, for example, and use that to determine which profile you might want to use. So, for example, if I try and sign into a network that a Wi-Fi network that is already existing in a profile, the network manager will say to me, hold on, sounds like you're connecting to your home network. Would you like to switch to the home profile? If I say yes, it will just switch the profile over automatically and do it appropriate for that profile. That means that it's very straightforward to have the system essentially automatically configured for you for wherever you happen to be. Another new aspect of RISC Direct is the Pinboard 2 element, which is available on the website separately, of course, just like the TCP/IP stack and other bits. You can see the various pins in the icons pinned to the pinboard. We've talked about this at some length in the past, but basically Pinboard 2 gives you a much more flexible desktop. You can save files directly to the pinboard. We can open a text file, we can go save straight onto the desktop like you would on other platforms. There exists a comfortable location, but acts as a full filing system. So in this case, it happens to be in boot choices. Pinboard, saved files. And if I delete that file, you'll see that it disappears from the desktop. So it's a fluid system that responds to changes that you make either through Pinboard or on your hard disk, reflecting the contents just like you would expect with a filer window. So essentially you have a desktop that will act like a folder for you to work in. You can create folders of your own on it, you can copy files into it, so on and so forth. And it also has the concept of sticky notes, so you can press menu and go key, and that will create a new sticky note, which you can use to append notes to your desktop like you would on other platforms, and to give you a more productive desktop, essentially. We can also go to the configuration screen for the new pinboard. We have additional modes of image scaling, so we can do full screen. And then we can set the icon bar opacity. And because that's a pale thing, I think we're not seeing anything. Okay, I'm not quite sure what's happening here because that should have more or less dropped out. You can see it's at low opacities, it removes the black bar across the bottom of the screen. Oh, sorry, across the top of the icon bar. But I'm not necessarily seeing the transparency that I would have expected there. So that may be because the backdrop is not large enough to fill the screen, but I don't know. So that's one for the another one for the later list. Pinboard also provides things like a carousel feature, so you can drop in a folder of images and it will cycle through the images. It supports any image format that ChangeFSI does. So that means you can use obviously things like JPEGs, BMPs, PNGs, whatever you might come across online for pinboard backdrop, and it caches the images in their converted form, so you don't get a speed hit by using something like a very large JPEG. We found that if you put a sort of 50 megapixel JPEG as your backdrop, then you've got quite a distinct slowdown to the computer with the old pinboard. In the new pinboard, if you tick the cache option, it will remember it as a spike, which allows you to use the image with no slowdown. There are all sorts of techniques included for sort of blending the text of icons in with the background. You can set up automatic pin positioning, choose settings for the stickies, the pinboard folder. We can add a watermark where we can put a logo onto the desktop as a draw file. And there are all sorts of miscellaneous options for customizing it to however you want. As Richard said, there have been a few tweaks already since the initial pre-pro release. I showed you things like the support email addresses and things tucked into the files. We've also added the ability to have the disk name shown under the icon bar icon. So instead of seeing :0 under your SD card, you actually get the name of the SD card under there. And there's various other tweaks and tidy ups based on things that people have suggested that have come in. As we've seen, I've seen more things during the talk tonight, so tomorrow we'll be grinding my way through, trying to figure out what's happening on all of these things. So it sounds like there'll be another version popping out, hopefully later on tomorrow or Friday. And I think that I'm going to, just going to show you one last little thing. One of the features of RISC Direct version 3 is through video for movies and recordings. So you can see here we have an MP4 file, which is a format that RISC traditionally doesn't support out of the box. Not only has it picked up the right icon, you can see it's got an MP4 icon. We can simply double click on it to play it. And you can see that in a moment you should see, subject to the speeds of VNC and the internet, you should see a video playing on RISC OS. It's considerably smoother if you're using it natively directly rather than sending it over VNC and via Zoom. But you can see that it is happily playing with audio a MP4 movie. This is a copyright-free movie. The Universal forgot to put a copyright message on the movie, so it entered the public domain. It's called Charade. and it's quite a fun watch. But that's by the by. The point is, you can see MP4 video playing quite happily on RISC-OS alongside the classic MPEGs. You've got your classic Big Butt Bunny. That's showing up as a black window because that's actually using hardware acceleration in the latest versions, and VNC doesn't display the hardware accelerated overlays for hardware accelerated video, so you're just seeing a blank box. On a real monitor, you would see the video played back as you would expect. Other inclusions include Ovation Pro, which David Prilling recently made freely available. We've also added in the user manual, which was produced by Chris Hall with permission. We have basically updated versions of almost every application that's included within RISC-OS Direct. So everything from games to graphics programs. There's also small other additions like network printing support via the HPJet Direct protocol, which most network equipped lasers and things support. So that's included as standard in latest Direct, and just a whole lot of enhancements to try and make the thing as good as we can possibly make it. As you've seen, there's clearly still some work to go, but that's why I say it's trying to make RISC-OS as good as it can be and showcase it in the best possible light that we can do. And with that, I think I will close this window and hopefully go back to normal Zoom and open it up to any questions that people might have.
I think the problem you had, I think, with the icon bar, please, you have to have a JPEG in the cache, and then it works.
Oh right, okay. Yeah, I thought it worked with sprites, but
yeah, it worked. And I've got it down to 0% on mine, so.
I will explain. As you can tell, I set up the card earlier today. Demo purpose did run through the various demo steps beforehand. Famous last words, as it were, of any demo. Always do it. Always do a trial one before you go live.
No problem. Which version of iris are we using now?
The version that's included in RISC-OS Direct is the January release with a few changes to try and make it play nice with Python and other programs that are included with RISC-OS Direct. As you saw, clearly I need to check further. There's something that I've missed there. I'm sure I had it working quite happily in the test
Right.
before the London show, but again, it looks like there's a little more work to be done there. But the whole point is that it should play nice with the applications that are included in RISC-OS Direct. There are newer versions of Iris that have been sent to us by the programmer, but there are elements of those that we're not happy with. So rather than put out something that we were not comfortable with, we've gone with the slightly older version that we are a little bit more satisfied with. One thing I wanted to show, I didn't get around to doing it, is how you can change the browser identity in Iris by going to choices and then I forget what it's called.
User agents?
User agent, thank you. Yes. You can change that from a variety of things. Now, what we found is that some login pages and or some Cloudflare type protection pages work much better if you select the first one on the list rather than the sort of native Iris user agent. If you pick the first one on the list, you've got to go and double click on it and open a new browser window once you've clicked on it and activated it. But if you do that, it can get you past some sites that are doing more intense sort of checking of the browser, and basically are blocking out anything that's not recognized to be specific versions of Chrome or what have you. So that's a useful little trick if you encounter sites that sort of seemingly won't let you in with Iris. Do try the user agent option within the choices. Close your main browser window, activate the new user agent, set it, and then click on the icon bar icon again, open a new window, and try again. You may be surprised and get significantly further. Certainly the old eFile form allowed me to use eBay again, which started doing more checks and balances recently.
Andrew, I've
Yeah.
had a little bit of difficulty installing the ROD stack on a machine that was set to use static IP addresses. Now, I realise that Wi-Fi and static IP don't exactly go together, but it caused the machine to hang, and I wondered if that had been sorted.
I believe there has been some work done. I haven't encountered that myself personally, but I will check with the programmer. I know that we haven't had as much available developer time in the last 2 months as we would have liked, so it has been a case of fighting fires to ensure that we deal with as much as we can within the limited time available. Hopefully there will be a little bit more time opening up between now and Christmas. So if we haven't solved your particular issue, hopefully we will do in the next couple of months. But do keep on us, and if you want to drop us an email, I will make sure you've got the absolute latest drop from Andy, so that you can see if it's resolving whatever your issue was. I do know I've used it with static IP addresses without running into issues, so I don't think it's fundamentally flawed in that manner, but obviously see how you get on with the latest version, and we'll see how we go. Okay,
thanks very much. I'm away for a week, but I'll start doing things.
Best to me when you get back, or you've got the latest build. Any questions anywhere else?
I've just mentioned to Richard, hang on a minute, pressing the wrong key. Are you aware, I've just mentioned it to Richard, are you aware that as of about 2 weeks ago, if you do a Google search from the home page, you can bring up the search page, but when you try to open a link, that's it. Machine completely stiff, because apparently something appears to have changed on the search page. I think somebody said it was in the top right corner, but I can't remember what it was. And it now, you have to create a new default. You can't just pick one of the existing ones. You have to create a brand new user agent that takes it back to a much older version of the Google search, apparently. It certainly locked my machine up several times. So now I use DuckDuckGo to get around it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that we noticed 2 days before the show, or in the week running before the show. There was no way we could react to that in time. And the only thing I could have done was possibly remove Google as the default search engine, but I think that would have been a bit heavy-handed. I think we need to look at the default user agents and the like that are being used by Iris. I mean, the tip I was giving earlier about the user agents kind of ramming home to me that it's time to reevaluate how Iris is identifying itself again, we do this every 18 months or so, and I think it's time to have another stab at it. Maybe that will help with Google, although it may also be something that's better in the later builds. I don't know. Essentially, I'm afraid that's a case of the internet is always a movable feast, and that's what's always been such a problem for RISC-OS in the past. One of the changes that is in the newer builds that we haven't released yet is that it is now built on a newer version of WebKit. So there is some hope that will help with things, but of course, as always, new versions of WebKit introduce new challenges because the new versions are always designed with other platforms in mind, not RISC-OS. So, for example, there's a move to jettisoning support for non-hardware accelerated page render, for example. So if you don't have OpenGL, good luck to you. The version that we've ported still does support the software rendering, but it sort of gives you an idea of the direction things are going in and why it's a constant challenge to keep on top of changes in the real world web.
One thing I noticed in Direct, I think it was in the original one as well, you supply Fireworks.
Yep.
But it's not the Fireworks Pro. So if you download the thing, you must be careful you don't overwrite anybody's Fireworks Pro copy. I think that happened years ago when they first brought it out. I don't know if there's any way of detecting that you've already got if you like, the more enhanced version than the standard freebie version. I don't know. Or perhaps a warning message or something. I appreciate it more for you. It's got directive more for you.
It's something that we've
updating it. You need to be aware of that one.
Yeah, it's something that I've tended to tackle as part of my own machine builds because I know that they may have a variety of different things on them. RISC-OS Direct, the aim was to make it as a sort of update specifically for what is distributed as part of RISC-OS Direct rather than necessarily. But I do hear what you're saying. Essentially, it would mean taking Fireworks out of the distribution altogether and putting it separately, which is how I've dealt with it for my machine owners. But we were quite specifically trying to make it as fewer steps and as straightforward as possible for a new, somebody who's just getting dipping their toe into RISC-OS and they want to update to version 3. Too many steps, too much complication starts to make it problematic, and I think that would really be the driving force for keeping it as is. But I do hear what you're saying.
Fair enough.
Hi, Andrew.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Doug.
Hi. Fresco had an helpers application type setup. So if I forget the name of the program that was there, which was like a real player add-on. Is that something that might be considered for Iris? I'm particularly thinking around when you go on to, say, a YouTube site, that if you had a helper element there that could link into YT Play and automatically set things up, that might be, or might that be kicking one bit further down the line, as they say?
I mean, it's. I think you're referring to the plugin protocol that used to exist back in the day. It's not a bad thought. Far from it. I'm not entirely sure about how practical it would be in terms of making WebKit aware of other applications on RISC-OS. That would really be one for Lee, the programmer of Iris, I think. We have talked on numerous occasions about possibilities of porting the GStreamer me playing of WebKit or GStreamer is shared by a number of Linux browser applications, and it's sort of how video is streamed on the Linux platforms. In principle, I think it is doable. It's just yet more moving parts to add into Iris at a time when we're still sort of trying to get the basics finished. So never say never on that. Certainly that's project goal for second, Iris 2. But I don't want to make you a promise on something that really hasn't been test driven yet. But conceptually, there is support in WebKit for streaming video through GStreamer if a port of GStreamer existed for RISC-OS.
Thanks for that. And a secondary question. I've tested the new TCP/IP stack on a number of systems, Pantherboard, Beagle, etc., and quite a few, including the Ionics. But I did notice when I upgraded the Ionics to 5.31 that it doesn't seem to, if you've got the network manager set up to come on instead of the legacy manager, it sort of aborts because it can't see, allegedly, it can't see the interface.
Okay, so this is probably similar to the issue that we have.
Meant to drop on the bug stack list, so when I get time, I'll do that. But I wasn't sure whether you were aware.
Drop us an email. We have addressed an issue like that with the titanium driver. Essentially, what this is likely to be is that when we converted the various TCP or Ethernet drivers to work with the IPv6 stack sort of a couple of years ago, we implemented what was necessary in those drivers to work with the stack as it stood then. But there are a couple of additional features that the network manager expects to be there that were not necessarily put into the drivers when we created them 2 years ago. And we have a sort of a bit of a bit rot situation where, we haven't touched those drivers in a couple of years, and therefore the network manager's sort of brand new functionality is not working with drivers that were developed 2 years ago. So that's just, I'm afraid, lack of testing on our, because we don't have an Alex to test. So I will raise it with Andy as something to get sorted. As I say, we had something similar with the titanium board, which is sorted in the latest version, as far as I'm aware. Sounds we need to apply the same set of fixes to the Ionics driver as well.
But like you said earlier, I'm quite impressed by the new stack and how it works on the various machines. So, that's testament, I think, to a lot of the work that's gone in the background. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly been a big project. I think possibly people don't realise just how much work goes into something like RISC-OS Direct. It looks just like another copy of RISC-OS, and surely you can knock that over in 10 minutes. But the amount of back and forth and checking versions, and we did have some help from a guy in Holland who, I think it's Holland anyway, who compiled some lists of modules and version numbers and file sizes and change dates and things for us, which was extremely helpful. Thank you. But it's a big project, and it has to work on a variety of different systems and configurations. As you saw, I just did a replacement disk and tried to knock it out this afternoon quickly, and there were things that didn't work as I was expecting. So there's still stuff to just polish on the system. And I think, I noticed the perennial question about it's on the tab. Somebody was saying about Iris available separate direct. You could see we're trying to get Iris to work and play nice with applications even within the direct framework. The whole point that we were trying to do was to put something out Iris-wise that worked and played nice within a controlled environment, because getting Iris, which is a sort of bleeding edge application, to work correctly with all the existing RISC software is an ongoing challenge. And we are making headway, no question on that. But releasing as part of Direct made it possible to put it out in a way that hopefully reduces the amount of technical support that falls onto Richard and I to deal with. Obviously, the zip itself is freely downloadable, so there's no reason people can't download the RISC Direct upgrade zip with all software inside. So, it's out there, it's free. The best used in combination with RISC Direct, because we can control the environment that it's running in. But as you say, you can see there's still more work for me to do on that. So yeah, it's a never-ending challenge. Chris Johns is asking, are there any ideas on how to get Direct into the hands of new users? I mean, the plan always with RISC Direct was to hand it out at high jams and things, but COVID rather destroyed that plan. We just stocked up on a big load of SD cards specifically for that purpose, and then I think we did 2 Raspberry Pi jams, I think, before COVID shut them all down, and I'm not sure that the jam scene has taken off again post-COVID in the way that it was doing before COVID. Certainly, I'm not reading about Raspberry Pi jams in the way that they were all over the place prior to the COVID outbreak. So the sort of physical media distribution side of things is a bit on hiatus. We always wanted to do it in a way where we actually sort of made physical contact with people so that we could talk to them about RISC and what it was, rather than just randomly passing it out like a freebie at an exhibition, because we felt that if we're not careful, you're just basically giving people a £5 SD card for them to use for something else, which kind of defeats the point in providing them with the card. And so we thought, if we can sort of interact with people and say, hi, this is RISC, this is what it does, this is what it runs on, this is what we're about, we thought we'd have much more success in actually seeing the cards used by people who were new in the operating system. So essentially, if people do have suggestions, we are all ears as to how to get things out there. Obviously, we've tried to press release the new version of RISC Direct. I did notice that there were some YouTube videos and things appearing about it. And obviously, I think that's going to be an important outlet. If anybody knows people who are doing YouTube channels and the like, then please, again, let us know, and we'll encourage people to do videos and things on them, because that's ultimately how people find out about stuff. The challenge always with YouTubers is getting them to see the benefits of something like RISC if they're not used to it. I did see one video that was quite damning, simply because the YouTuber basically dwelling on all the things that they perceived that they couldn't do compared to sort of Windows or Raspberry Pi OS, rather than on the things that they could do and do well on RISC. So that was a little frustrating, but essentially, we want to see RISC Direct as an outreach thing. We want more people to try RISC. And at the end of the day, making RISC Direct as good as it can possibly be is our goal in terms of reaching new people. That unless we deliver something that is at least within spitting distance of what they can do with Raspberry Pi OS on a Pi, then we're not even in the conversation. And that's what RISC Direct is basically all about, is making RISC at least part of the conversation again.
Yeah. On that, Andrew, explaining computers has tested RISC-OS on a couple of occasions. Might be worth dropping them a line, because that's a regular YouTube setup, and you might be able to, go on a YouTube session with them, or just like you do today, or give them a copy and talk them through things. I think I forget also. Dan Wood, is it? Does some podcasts, and he's reviewed RISC-OS previously. So there's a couple of YouTube channels that might get to a wider audience.
I won't remember the names. Forgive me. So again, email would be wonderful if you have a chance just to pop an email out with names and preferably email addresses if you happen to know them, or contact details. That would be fantastic, and I will gladly sort of point these people the thing. I think Richard said we've compiled a list of people who have expressed interest in RISC-OS Direct, subject to GDPR restrictions, etc. And we will be contacting them very shortly to let them know about the new RISC-OS Direct, so that there's 3 figures worth of people who have contacted us over the last sort of 2 or 3 years about RISC-OS Direct. So notifying everyone that there is a new version, that it addresses some of the things that they've been concerned about. I think that's going to be important.
General question for you, Andrew, and
Yes.
for Richard. I know you probably may have been talking about RISC-OS Direct tonight, but have you got any thought of what future developments you might be looking at, not just in RISC-OS develop, but obviously at RISC-OS development? Any sort of things you can perhaps tantalize us with?
Well, I mean, there's still bits and pieces that are ongoing that we haven't that haven't quite flourished yet. In the past, I've shown CacheFus, for example, which speeds up disk access and the like. The programmer who does CacheFus is the same programmer, Andy Voyer, who does Pinboard 2, TCP/IP, and so on. So he's a busy boy, and that's sort of taken a back seat because of the need to get the network manager and things sorted, and tweaks to Pinboard and so on. So I noticed somebody in the chat said something about, I'm sure there are excellent programmers out there willing to chip in on things. The biggest problem has always been that when push comes to shove, no, there aren't programmers willing to chip in. It tends to all fall on the heads of sort of half a dozen key people, unfortunately. Yes, there are people out there, and yes, they are willing to do things, but often the big jobs, unfortunately, do tend to require specialist knowledge and lots of free time, and people don't tend to have that amount of free time to be able to contribute. Annoyingly, well, not annoyingly is the wrong word, but understandably. But yeah, we could do with a lot of people getting a lot of free time, I think, to really benefit the RISC-OS scene.
Andrew, there's a question from Jock in the chat, commenting about, is Iris using the RAM disk, and does it still benefit from the speed up that it used to? Could you answer that one for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, it doesn't use it by default. The reason for that is very simple. To use Iris RAM, you need a fairly sizable RAM disk. Probably want it about 250 megabytes, I would have thought. You possibly get away with 200, but it needs to be pretty sizable. Unfortunately, the original Raspberry Pi 1s tended to come with 256 or 512 meg RAM, and we still have to support those platforms. So I can't ship the operating system pre-configured to a 256 meg RAM disk if the computer is, doesn't have enough RAM to do that. It's no problem on a 4 Raspberry Pi 4 think 12 was still the norm in probably Pi 3. I think it did 5, maybe did that. Maybe the Pi 3 moved to 1 gig. I don't recall. But for quite a long time, Raspberry Pi was quite limited in RAM, and even if you took 512 meg ones, they use, I think, probably about 80 meg for video. So you've probably got more like 400 or 400 to 430 meg RAM. And if you take 256 of it for a RAM disk, then you've got maybe a couple of hundred meg to actually run in. And Iris needs more than a couple of hundred meg to run. So yeah, the mathematics is the problem in terms of Iris RAM. However, it is included with Iris in Direct 3. And it still benefits if you make use of it. And literally, all the instructions are included alongside it. All you have to do is basically run Iris in your run Iris in your boot sequence, and then it should. I think if I recall correctly, I made sure that the icon that's on the pinboard by default in Direct 3 is pointing to the ResourceFS version, which is where Iris RAM would ultimately reside. As well, so it's basically ready to use with Iris RAM, but not doing so by default.
Could you not consider adding that to that welcome app, so it can check the amount of memory that's available, and then offer the option of, would you like to do a RAM disk this size?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thought. I'm a bit loath on overcomplicating the first time setup was too far, simply because
new user
I'm a little bit concerned about it. It's a good idea, a good solution to the problem. Let me put it that way.
I would say that a new user wouldn't necessarily know why they're being given that option, Vince, to run it in.
You'd have an explanation as part of the text. You have an explanation of.
But that's. Would you like? As Andrew says, that's more text to read.
Yeah, true.
Your point is absolutely valid. We're trying to cram as much as we possibly can into RISC Direct without making somebody go, oh, I've got to spend another 20 minutes doing another 50 pages. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But yeah, there are things we've discussed in the past about, oh, well, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should have this pop up on the screen. And we've gone around the houses, we've discussed it with the team that we've got, and we've gone, yeah, it would be nice. Yes, it makes perfect sense. But no, we're not going to do it because we just need to keep this as, relatively speaking, as brief as possible. I mean, when you get into a new car, I know you've had a new one, how often are you going to actually read the manual to check where all your switches are on the dashboard? Because sometimes they may not be clear. It's that sort of scenario sometimes that can happen. I'm sure
you say that, Richard, but guess what I did?
Oh, you read the manual. Well, typical Vince. As we say, as Andrew said, there's no point, it's dangerous to do a live demonstration because it always goes wrong. Point in question.
Yeah. I mean,
a question,
I do like...
if I may.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So you're not using cache-first yet for this? Because I
we didn't use cache first because it hasn't reached the level of maturity that I was with for including it in RISC Direct version 3 at this stage.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's been
so it's still in development. Yeah.
It's been for about 12 months while Andy's been doing other things, and fundamentally it works, and it's out there if anybody wants it. But with not having spent time on it in the last 12 months, I didn't feel comfortable that using it as using it in anger in Direct version 3 was the right thing to do at this stage. Again, that's part of the big game plan ultimately, is that it will be, but I wasn't comfortable with that without sort of spending a bit more QA time with Andy, making sure everything's as good as it can be. And essentially, a lot of RISC Direct was done we're trying to, because it could be a finite amount of time that we could all spend working on it over the summer.
Okay, thanks for that answer.
Just thought about the Iris RAM. Can you actually check the machine to see how much RAM it's got, and then if it's got it, auto install?
Well, I think that's kind of what Vince is getting at.
Right. Okay.
The downside of it, as I say, I like the idea. The downside, as well, I see two flaws. Firstly, as Richard pointed out, it's something you've got to explain to a new user during the setup. Something which is not quite dirty laundry, but borderline dirty laundry. I suppose you could pitch it as, do you want to auto load the browser in the background or something like that? For performance. So yes, it could be done, and maybe it should be done. I think we need to think about it offline and decide what's the right thing. But I mean, thanks to everyone for raising these kind of things and making us think about them, because it wasn't something that had registered as something that we wanted to spend time on previously. But clearly, if people are wanting that functionality, then that's something we need to listen to and react to. And Jock's saying, is it possible to build a script to automatically expand the partition? Unfortunately, not with RISC-OS. File call partitions are not easily expandable in the way that Linux and other partitions are, unfortunately. There's been various sort of investigations done by people like WROCC and John Abbott over the years to do it, and it is not a simple process. I think it's possible that within certain small size differences you could do something, but because of the way RISC-OS starts resizing things at different partition sizes, you'd effectively have to take all the data out, reformat the thing on the fly, then put all the data back on again somehow, without having anywhere to put that data in the meantime. It would be a bit of a nightmare task to try and automate that. What we might do is produce a couple of images of different sizes, so that, if you've got a 16, we need to do an 8 gig because that's the size of the SD cards that we have. But we might also issue a 16 gig that's based on a SanDisk or something like that. That might, a common brand that people would have access to, so that you can put that on a larger card and get a more useful amount of storage. Jock's saying that he would like to see 16, 32 and 64 gig image sizes. At time, that's the big problem. That the moment you start doing that, you're effectively multiplying up the amount of work of maintaining all those images and doing them. It's not a small ask. That's why it's taken us a while to get this one done, is that it doing one image is potentially an afternoon's work of sort of making the card, testing it, creating the image, checking that it fits on things, burning and things, testing backwards and forwards, and then uploading. I mean, just doing the modifications that we did this afternoon to shrink the thing, because of internet speeds and everything else, ended up taking probably about 3 hours to sort out. So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, yes, we'd have sizes available up to sort of 128 gig, even 256 gig at different intervals for different cards. But I don't want to commit to something like that, because it's just a bit frightening, the amount of time that could potentially eat up.
One possibility is that if you have an 8 gigabyte image that is the standard image, one possibility, and I don't know how easy this would be, is that if you can relocate or copy the file call partition to the very end of the card, you could then put a 56 gigabyte file core partition on the rest of the card, in a place it would normally be, and then be able to read what is in the 8 gigabyte partition to copy it across. And that might be doable because you don't really care whether it's 56 or 64 gigabyte. Once you get into the larger cards, then you'd only have to have a bit of software that could do that. That's feasible.
Feasible, yes. Need someone to develop it. I think would be the. I think in a more practical sense, what I would like to do, which I haven't yet done, and if anybody is in touch with him, John Abbott, with his disk partitioning software, that can prepare an SD card of indeterminate size for use with RISC-OS. And I would quite like to work with John to do a RISC-OS Direct version of that software, so that, yes, the basic image of RISC-OS Direct might be 8 gig, but if the tools are provided so that you can make your own card of any size and have RISC-OS Direct copied onto it, that might be a good workaround. That seems to have pleased Jock, so sounds like that would be a plan. As I say, if anybody's sort of, I haven't heard from John for a little while. So if anybody, John, wants to sort of grease the wheels on that, would be appreciated. I don't know what's involved. I assume we need to make the contents of RISC-OS Direct available as an easily downloadable form for him, so that when he populates the card, it can automatically do it. But I don't know the exact details, so but that's probably one to explore offline.
Yes, that should be straightforward, because he managed to cope with the change from 528 to 530, because all of the things it was looking for, of course, suddenly weren't there. So I suspect that's doable with an image somewhere that is the hard disk 4 image, is what he's currently doing with initializing a Pi SD card, for example. There is one thing I have a question about, and that is currently Partition Manager doesn't work with the block driver version of the NVMe filing system, because there's a SWI or something that it doesn't support. I wondered if you'd thought about that one.
That's a RISC-OS development talk, so I can't really be answering questions about RComp products tonight, if that's okay, Chris. I believe I'm scheduled to talk RComp next month, so I've got to keep my hats on the right hats, if you don't mind. Having said that, Chris Johns is on the stream, yeah. Watch this space, and maybe there'll be some news in time for the next Wakefield group in December.
Yeah, Andrew's coming back to us next month anyway to talk about our RISC-OS RComp products. So probably save your question for that.
Okay, understood. I think.
Yeah, I'm playing politics. Basically, because we've split the talks into a RISC-OS developments talk tonight and RComp in a month's time, I just don't really want to get sidelined onto RComp products rather than RISC-OS development products this evening, if that's okay.
General questions, anybody? All right. everybody started installing RISC Direct on everything. Just make sure you back up your existing software first.
Are there any? There was quite a lot of text chat. I haven't managed to read through it all. If anybody feels like I haven't answered any questions, then could they just sort of shout on the text chat to say that, to ask questions that I've missed, if there's anything outstanding. Jeremy Blaze asked about Iris source code. Iris available on Git. I think it's on GitHub. One of the sort of post-London show things was to try and get that opened up more generally. That's really down to me having a conversation with Lee and sorting out the minutiae of getting that more publicly accessible, but it is on GitHub for that very purpose. On a similar topic, things like the TCP IP and things do exist on RISC Development's own GitHub, or GitLab, sorry. So, if people do want to contribute or want source code access to the things that we do drop us a line, and we can give access to the GitLab to anybody who so desires.
Everybody, I'm very sorry. I'm going to have to leave the meeting now. I've got an hour and a half drive tomorrow morning to see a customer in a different county, and I need to get prepared for that. I didn't have quite enough time today to get things done. So thank you ever so much for, I'm sure Andrew will agree, for inviting both of us to come and speak to you. It's really nice to see so many people, names that I recognise and names that I don't. So again, thank you ever so much. And if you are at any of the shows, do please come up and make yourself known. And it'll be really nice to actually put the faces to the names.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Also, Richard. Yep.
I'll leave you with Andrew. I'm sure he'll talk till midnight.
His midnight is not the same as our midnights, I suspect.
Okay, Richard.
Okay, Richard. Good night.
Any more questions for Andrew on RISC Development and RISC Direct?
One thing I can say, which kind of overlaps with RComp a bit, and apologies if you put a sort of RComp hat on or something. Machines that we sell that are using RISC Direct Plus, which is essentially direct with additional commercial applications added. I am preparing an update for that so that they will be all in sync with what we're doing with RISC Direct. It won't Iris because politically that's still a bit of a hot potato, but it will contain the rest of the sort of elements that make up RISC Direct, minus the first time setup, which doesn't really make sense on an RComp machine. But basically those machines that run Direct Plus will be brought in sync within the next probably week.
Right, I shall have to say cheerio. I need to go now. So thanks for an excellent talk, Andrew.
Well, thanks for the questions, Chris. Sorry, I've sort of put you off on a little bit on some of them, but hopefully by putting you off, we'll have more news for you in a month's time.
My expectations are raised now. Excellent. Thank you.
some water being poured on them, I think. But yeah, we'll do our best.
There's a question there, Andrew, from
somebody say, I'm curious, how is Iris a political hot potato? There are certain individuals who are not keen on my involvement with RComp and RISC OS developments and potential cross-contamination between the two. So I try and play it safe where there is potential for apparent favoritism, and Iris is one that seems to be sensitive to certain individuals. So I decided that the best way to sidestep this was to not include it in the distributions that I'm putting out customers with an RComp hat on. That's probably unnecessarily safe, as it were. But I just think that if people are going to be upset by things, then let's not fan the flames. If keeping some separation there between RComp and RISC-OS developments is makes people happier and more comfortable, then that's probably the right thing to do. Is that okay, Jeremy? I'm basically just trying to take a responsible thing to something that is, there's a grey area in between, and let's keep things nice and clear.
Any more questions? Everybody's gone quiet. You've answered all the questions, but it sounds a bit under.
I mean, Chris was. I don't think actually I particularly went into sort of things for the future. I mean, the main thing for the future is ongoing Iris development as far as RISC-OS developments is concerned. That because we have new versions waiting in the wings, spending more time on those and getting those shipshape will be the next thing that we do, I think. It's just a case that the focus, what we wanted to get RISC-OS Direct out, because we've been promising it for a long time, and people rightly saying, well, where is it? And because it draws together all of the things that we've been working on, it seemed like very much the thing that we wanted to focus on for this part of the year. You mentioned separately a solution for Wi-Fi on the Pi 400. Pi 400 is a bit of a weird one. Some of the Pi 400s are absolutely fine, work no problems. Some of the later ones seem to have different technology inside them, and are a bit more problematic firmware-wise. I don't think we have a magic wand solution to the problematic ones. Beyond sort of firmware updates and the like. I think it's a bit of an open issue at the moment that the firmware available for some of the more recent Pi 400s seems a bit flaky, and that's the firmware comes from other platforms. So it's sort of, if the firmware available for other platforms is flaky, then because that gets downloaded to the chip as part of the startup sequence of the Wi-Fi driver, it's a sort of binary blob that just gets put there. And if we can't, if it's not perfect, it's not what we can do with it until a new version comes out that resolves it. So yeah, I'll be honest, it's probably not a major priority for us because we need to get things like the network manager completed first. But obviously we're keeping an eye on what's available in terms of firmware for the Pi 400. And if we do come across a firmware that solves that, then obviously we'll roll that out as soon as we can. But I'd be lying if I said saying that that was something we're going to spend a lot of engineering time on in the immediate future, because there are other things that affect everybody that are more pressing to get done. I think that's the other aspect, that basically the network manager is functional but not finished, and we'd like to see that get to a point where it's all singing, all dancing, whereas at the moment it sings but maybe falls over its feet slightly in the dancing, and that's probably another sort of 6 months work for the future. Effectively, we have ongoing work that we're trying to get done, but it's just graft before we can have anything to show on some of those elements. So yeah, we definitely have things forthcoming, but it's not things that really we can talk too much about at this stage, because there's a lot of hard yards to get done on there. There's a roadmap for Iris, as you sort of heard me hinting towards an Iris 2 with GStreamer, etc. But again, getting Iris to a place where it's as good as it can be is a huge amount of work, and continues to be a huge amount of work. So at the risk of sounding negative, it's just there's hard yards to be done between now and next summer. Let's say, in terms of, from all the different things. The important thing was to get out what we've got done, what the work that we have managed to put together, with Iris, with everything else, and get that presented so that we're not just sitting there for another year before people get their hands on things. So yeah. I think the other thing people have asked about is a manual for the TCP/IP, and that's something that we're working with Chris Hall on to get sorted. That was a sort of first draft of that he's produced, but we just need to sort of refine that a little bit, I think, before we can get that out. But again, that's something that will get added as and when it's ready, and just to explain how the new functionality in the TCP/IP works, and give people an understanding of how to set it up on the different platforms that it's available for. Longer term, there's the dreaded 64-bit issue, and that counts for an awful lot of behind the scenes talk. But again, without having anything hard and fast to say about it, we tend to subscribe to the if we haven't got anything sensible to say, then don't say it approach until things are a little bit more solidified as to how things are being done. I fall very much into the camp that, to me, any solution for 64-bit needs to take into account existing software, because if we have a 64-bit operating system tomorrow and no software to work on it, we're back to square one again. And the risk I've seen, unfortunately, is it is not as healthy as it was, say, when Castle produced the 32-bit Ionic, and a lot of software is not possible to be reworked to 64-bit without huge amounts of work, and I don't suspect that will happen. So I think any solution to 64-bit has to acknowledge that existing software will need a helping hand to work on it, and that will be my priority as far as sort of seeing 64-bit stuff done, is to ensure that we don't lose all the software in the process. Jock asks about RISC Direct with RPCMU. It doesn't work with RPCMU out of the box for two reasons. Firstly, there are difference in the distribution between the Raspberry Pi and the RPCMU version, not least of which is the fact that the Raspberry Pi version uses a Raspberry Pi ROM and the RPCMU uses a completely different ROM. But also some of the software that we use is designed for computers with floating point hardware, VFP hardware, floating point acceleration, which is not supported under RPCMU. So you wouldn't just be able to use all of the software as is in RISC that's present in RISC-OS Direct v3. Certainly Iris wouldn't work on RPCMU, for example. Similarly, I think MPlayer, the video playback system, is utilizes hardware floating point, and probably a few other bits and bobs in the distribution are making use of that functionality to optimize performance on the available hardware. So there would need to be some software replacement or removal to get it to work correctly on RPCMU. That being said, we'll probably just copy across the vast majority of it, and the bits that didn't work would probably just fail gracefully. If you tried to run an MP4 file, for example, it just wouldn't work. But if you could live with those kind of restrictions, then it probably would be possible to upgrade it, but I haven't tried. I'd be very happy to work with Peter Howkins and his brother to see that updated, because I know that the Easy Start bundles that he does for RPCMU are very much appreciated by everyone in the community. Certainly I've made use of them on a few occasions, so very much like to see that happen. But that's really down to, I mean, he was the driving force behind the original, and would probably have to be the driving force behind the upgrade too. But anything I can do to facilitate that, or help or assist or what have you, then more than happy to do so. And in answer to, there's been some talk of QMU. We are exploring multiple options and have made discussions in various areas, including that. But again, as I say, if I don't have anything sensible to say, it's better that I don't say something, because it might sound like a promise, and we're not at a stage where we can promise anything 64-bit wise yet, beyond the fact that, yes, there are multiple paths that we have talked about and discussed with programmers. Vaporware, that's very much where things stand. Really, I think 64-bit wise at the moment, good intentions, but yeah, I think it would be unwise to go any further than that. RISC-OS, I mean, the focus is on RISC-OS Direct because it's a real manifestation of the software that we've been promising for years. And okay, maybe it's slightly anticlimactic to be talking about stuff that's now released and has been coming for a while. But the important thing is it's out there. People can grab it. There's no fees associated with it. It's there. You can download it yourself right now. And that is actually quite a big deal from a RISC-OS perspective, that things like Iris being available without being hidden behind a paywall or anything is a big step forward in terms of what you can do with RISC-OS.
Is there anything from RISC-OS development thinking about connectivity with Windows and Samba? Obviously, much depreciated on Samba 1. You can
yeah.
do it,
again, something that we've had discussions about on multiple occasions, and yeah, we're back down to developer time more than anything else. The source code to some work that somebody else did has been made available, The problem is that the point at which they stopped is where the point where the sort of big chunk of work starts. And it's great that the source code that was made available has been made available, but I think the reason they stopped was probably because they realized just how much work was going to be to go to the next stage. And therefore, whilst it might be nice to work with that, we're back to the age-old problem of people willing to do that work, able to do that work. You know, if I could clone some of our programmers, it would be extremely desirable. But sadly, there's only one each of Andy, John, and what have you. And so, yeah. What about multi-core support? Well, there's a multi-core RMX6 version available. Can't do much with it, but you know, it's possible to build a multi-core version of RISC these days for whichever platform you particularly want to try it on. The problem is that there's quite a few SWIs that are not multi-core friendly, and yeah, I mean, I think in some ways that might be the direction RISC has to go in an absence of 64-bit, because if you can't go any more sort of in a forward direction, then maybe you have to go sideways to enhance the operating system. But I think we're back down to software compatibility, that if you've got SWIs and things that are not compatible in software that's not been written to be sensitive to the needs of a multi-core environment, you do run the risk of reducing the software compatibility for limited benefits. Got smiles with the word phrase multi-core WebKit engine. Yes, there are multi-core enhancements within the WebKit engine that could be enabled. I think you'd probably be a little disappointed by how many benefits it brings. Web browsing is actually fairly single-threaded. Yes, you can parallelize certain portions of it, but generally speaking, when you see browser tests and benchmarks on other platforms, they tend to be an indication of single-threaded performance, not multi-thread performance, first and foremost. So it is still a case, really, where, yes, there will be some slight benefits to a multi-core WebKit, but it isn't a magic bullet to making Iris really fast, unfortunately. Web browsers just do benefit from clock speed, unfortunately. Probably the way forward with Iris is smoothing the interfaces between sort of RISC-OS land and Linux land. That I think there's still quite a lot of overheads involved in sort of making Linux and RISC-OS merge in terms of memory management and user interface elements and the weight thereof in converting between sort of GTK and RISC-OS. So optimizations there might deliver more performance. Hardware acceleration, as we've talked about, is almost certainly a way forward in delivering a smoother experience. And work on MESA-GL has been started by Lee, the Iris programmer. So there is progress in that regard. But my would like is that we end up restricting things to only work on Raspberry Pi, because that's where the hardware acceleration is open sourced more easily. And while there are other platforms available, in one sense, it's not a problem because a lot of stuff is Pi-based these days. But it's a slightly slippery path to go down when, you know, if we tie things heavily to the hardware acceleration available on Pi, then with Pi having already migrated to 64-bit and jettisoned RISC-OS compatibility, that's not the most comfortable place to be in. If we shackle RISC-OS to the Pi architecture, effectively we're saying that we're never going to have anything better than a Compute Module 4. And that may be true, but I'm not sure that we necessarily want to rule out the options that something else might be available somewhere to offer us higher clock speeds within a 32-bit realm. I don't know what it would be at this point, but never say never. Right. That's probably done
I think
RISC developments to death at this point, I think.
if there's no further questions, I think as Andrew says, we're done.
I'll just say thank you to Vince for his movie recommendations at the London show. Steph and I have been.
I tell you tried Black Phone, which I thought was a brilliant one.
We did that one, yes, and a couple of the other ones that I saw on your list that had 7 or higher on your ranking system.
Yeah, I've watched a few more since then.
You need a blog to post your.
I do watch a few films now and then.
Post the rankings on.
Yeah. And now my phone's decided to freeze. We'll have another discussion another time, Andrew.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, you've had a record attendance tonight for one of our meetings, so.
Oh, how many
I
did
saw
we
up
get to?
29 at one point.
I think that's it. It's the highest attendance for one of our meetings all this year, anyway, so far.
Oh, well.
So, obviously, a lot of people are interested in RISC Direct.
Well,
quite right too.
I do appreciate that for people who've already got their setups, it may seem a bit that it's not necessarily for them, but I would encourage people to sort of give it a whirl and try and incorporate the bits a bit. You know, if you're technically trying to find the right level, but it's not too difficult to incorporate bits of RISC Direct into what you're already running. If you sort of fire up a Pi or something with RISC Direct connected to your network, you can copy things across onto your other machines if you like bits of it. And I would encourage people to sort of mess around with it and play with it, and cherry pick the best bits out of it and see how we've done things if they wish.
I'd like to certainly thank Andrew and Richard for a very interesting meeting and taking us through RISC Direct and all the developments going on.
Well, I've got my work cut out tomorrow trying to fix the bugs. You can never win.
You never get a rest, Andrew.
It does feel like that. I thought I got there with RISC Direct. I really did. Stupid Andrew. It's never that simple.
People finding all these bugs for you to deal with, you know.
I suppose it's better now before we do the disk image and set that in stone. At least it's a little bit more malleable while it's still a zip file of updates. Peter says, I saw 32 when I looked. Oh, that must be the attendance numbers. Sorry, I was trying to get the context. It's always difficult trying to get people to turn up to meetings and user group things. I think you guys do a really good job trying to keeping it going and month on month sorting it.
What happened? Sorry, can I say what happened to
Go on, Chris.
your website a couple of nights ago? It seemed to disappeared. Your risk of development website.
Oh, right. The website is on a rather crusty server. That is, you poke it too hard, it's Linux, so it doesn't blue screen of death, but you know what I mean. And Richard is in the process of migrating some of the servers over to Pi 5 based servers. So rather than having sort of lots of virtual machines on one big Xeon server, there'll be multiple separate Pi 5 boards with RAID arrays connected to them. But it's a work in progress thing that he's been doing on for Orpheus over the summer. And as a result, it hasn't quite happened yet. So the server, the web is slightly on life support until that migration is finished completely.
Fair enough.
Speaking of the website,
I saw that you had WordPress in the address. Whether you've been caught up in the WordPress war of nerves going on between different parties in the WordPress community.
I think what happens is it tries to auto update itself at certain points, and then it blows itself up and dies. And so they're sort of fighting that fire.
Speaking of the website, Andrew, one of the things I noticed that occurred to me was a bit odd is that Direct isn't actually linked to from the front page.
Yeah, this has been raised with it. It's down to our webmaster getting on to do stuff, and that's the sort of show thing that we've got in touch with Ian and ask him to make some changes to make things like direct and TCP/IP Wi-Fi a little bit more prominent on the front page and the projects pages.
Yeah,
just revamping the look and feel of that front portion of the site, which yes is in need of work. Night, Ruth.
We spotted Jock's comment in the chat on that subject.
Yes, well, you know, I have a new ARComp website that's been done for me by somebody, and I feel embarrassed that it's been sat on my hard drive for probably 2 or 3 months now.
Yes, I've been planning on updating the softrock.co.uk one for some time being several years, and I haven't touched it yet.
Well, this is it. I mean, the guy's done a lot of work on it, and I'm very great. It also requires me to do a lot of work too, and I haven't had the time to do so.